This is a great event. The idea that we are going to honor lawyers and legends, people that we've all worked with, people we've all known, people we've appeared in front of as judges, and we're going to do it for a worthy cause. As you all know, Legal Aid of Minnesota helps us protect the rights of people that cannot otherwise afford legal representation. And it's important that we do what we can to support that. I'm glad tonight that I see a lot of people who I know have the wherewithal to assist. I'm first glad you all bought tables and you're here not just to celebrate with your friends, but to honor these various legends. But I assure you the bar will remain open even after you're seated, and we are going to start this program. You know, I'd like to start by recognizing some people who are part of this evening. I'm also glad to see that we've got people from both Bradenton and Sarasota. Because I have to admit, I'm one of those people very proud to have been born in Bradenton. Although I did, God love it, Shake Pit, Turner Spud Nut, and the smell of orange peels cooking at night. You gotta love that town. But I actually made the move to Sarasota and survived. Some people say altered, but survived. But tonight we're working together to recognize legends from both communities and to raise money for a very, very worthy event. So I hope tonight we're going to see some people demonstrate just where the money really is. Because everybody in Bradenton thinks all the things in Sarasota are just leased or rented. That's not real money. But I beg to differ. So I think we're going to see some wallets hopefully open up. It'll kind of keep you from leaning to the side with that big bulge back there. And we're going to raise some money tonight, I hope. There's the money people. There's the money people. Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear. But more importantly, what we're going to do is have a very wonderful opportunity to honor some people that we've all practiced with, that everyone here considers a legend in the legal profession. I hope all of you have had a chance to read Judge Gilbert Smith Jr.'s book, Lawyers and Legends. I read it. I got it right away. And I did what everybody does when there's a local book. I looked for my name, and it wasn't there. Okay. I figured, well, at least I'm in a picture somewhere. So I looked through the whole book, every picture, not once. Then I finally looked in like sort of the index. At least maybe I'm mentioned somewhere in a footnote, nothing. But I'm still here. And I still accept the fact that I'm not a legend, they are. The worst part was when Charlie Ann called me, and she said, Gary, I'd like to talk to you about this event we're doing, Lawyers and Legends. And I said, oh, Charlie, please, I'm just a humble lawyer. I don't really feel that I'm a legend. I don't need to be honored in that way. And she goes, oh, you? No, that wasn't why I called you. We're trying to make money, and we can't afford a real MC, so is it possible that you could come in and help? And of course, I volunteered. I'm very proud to be part of this event, and I've really enjoyed the fact that although I was born in Bradenton and did my early practice there, I was able to survive the move to the big, slick city of Sarasota. When I was a young lawyer, I had a partner who got mad because an attorney wrote him a letter confirming an extension on an answer. Woo! He thought that was insulting. You know, in Sarasota, my God, they would, you get an immediate email with a double, letter confirming and a letter to the judge, and they'd even tell you that you've agreed not to file a responsive pleading. It was an amazing difference in the communities. But I did survive, and I've loved seeing the way the two communities work together. There are some misconceptions. There are different ways of doing things. In Bradenton, when a woman wants to get a facelift, she goes to visit a cousin for a month and comes back refreshed. In Sarasota, a woman gets a facelift and she gets a table at the front of Michael's so her friends can see the work. Just a different point of view. But we are all lawyers, and we're all trying to do something very special. I know it sounds corny, but I take it very seriously and am proud to have been a lawyer all my life. We actually do something very important every day. We fight for the rights of people. Whether it's a meets and bounds description or whether it's a personal injury lawsuit, we are in there struggling every day to maintain the rule of law, to advocate. That's special, very important. And as you all know, there's a lot of people that would take it away from you if they had the chance. So, not just in our daily practice, but in events like this, we're here to try to participate together to contribute to providing assistance to people who can't afford it themselves. You know, Legal Aid of Minnesota does a lot for a lot of folks. It provides counseling to nonprofits that can't afford it. It provides divorce education. My wife's told me the classes are very good. And it helps people who, as I mentioned, otherwise could not help themselves. I believe the statistics on the website was that last year, 5,700 hours of pro bono time were given out by volunteers. That's over $1 million in legal fees. And before you complain, if they weren't there, you wouldn't have that many people to sue. So, you know, there's a kind of symbiotic relationship there. But tonight, I want to start by honoring some of the people that have made this program what it is today. And so I'd like to ask Larry Eager to come forward. And Linda Harradine.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Very good. On behalf of the staff and the Board of Directors of Manasota, Inc., I join Gary in welcoming you to the Lawyers and Legends and in thanking you for your generous support.
Stand in front, right?
You have to stand in front.
Okay. And I really want to thank and acknowledge all of our Board of Directors who are all here this evening, and I would like them to stand up so they can be recognized, because we wouldn't be here without them. So our board, if you could please stand up for a moment.
And I also want to acknowledge and thank the Board of Directors and all, oh, excuse me, that's Linda's line, I'm sorry. And now we must acknowledge the team that has been working behind the scenes for many months. Kim, Deborah, Jenny, you're supposed to be up here now. We'd like to extend a special thanks to you and your dedicated co-chair teams. We have Deborah Blue. Come on. We have Kim Ball. And we have Jenny Famiglia. It is our honor to present you with a small token of our extraordinary appreciation for all of you've done in making this such a huge event. And I've got to tell you something, this is a huge event when I look at this. So thank you very much. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Deborah Partridge, who, and also, more importantly, could you please step forward? Charlie. No, Charlie, if you could please step forward. And also, the lady of the night, my heartfelt thanks to Charlie Ann Cypress, who more than anyone is responsible for this evening. First, I'd like to give her this gift that is from the co-chairs. That's from the co-chairs. And this gift from the Board of Directors of Legal Aid. And also, Jim, that's the Porsche that she wants.
While we're at it, I'd like to thank a few more of our sponsors. Certainly Sarasota Magazine and Biz 941. Call out to Kelly Levin. And make sure you check out that great 3-page spread in the September issue of both magazines. Again, I'm not in that either. Our television sponsor tonight, Charles Clapsaddle and Manatee Educational Television, or METV as it's known. These guys have done all of this that you're going to see tonight, and they've done a marvelous job of it. Also, we have Linda DeMarias, is that it, from SNN 6, which I also, oh yeah. But I also think, is it true that Rick DeFuria is here in his new job? I heard that Rick might be working tonight, working the show, which would be kind of fun. But now, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce a friend and colleague of mine who is our primary sponsor for the night. A lawyer I've worked with for many years, both as an attorney and as a mediator, and that is Jeff Lerson.
Thank you, Gary. Most people know, some people don't though. Gary put himself through law school as a stand-up comedian, so we're lucky to have him. You know, every time, that's true. Every time I'm at a fundraising event, I think of something that John Kennedy said one time when he was president of the United States. It was a press conference, he was asked how he was enjoying the presidency, and he said, you know, I like it fairly well. The house is nice, it's close to the office, and the pay's good. And one of the reporters said, yeah, maybe that's true, but you don't need the money. You were born rich. And the president said, yeah, that's absolutely right. A circumstance I heartily recommend to all of you. Not all of us, obviously not everybody's born rich. But what we do understand, and why we're here to support Legal Aid of Manasota, is that if a free society cannot be fair and cannot provide fairness to its poor citizens, ultimately it's not going to be able to provide fairness to anybody. So Julie and I were very honored to be asked to participate and help sponsor tonight's event. We were inspired to do that by a whole bunch of people, among them Judge Gilbert Smith. Where's Judge Smith? Judge Smith, can you come up because we have something we want to give to you. Hey, Judge Smith. Great to see you. Okay. If you'll notice in the front of your program, there's a quote from Abraham Lincoln. Nobody knows exactly when he wrote this quote. We think around 1850. It starts out, I am not an accomplished lawyer. This is the same man who said at Gettysburg, the world will little note nor long remember what we say here today. This is a very humble person. What a lot of us really take pride in is that President Lincoln earned his living as a courtroom lawyer right up until the day he left for Washington, D.C. to assume the presidency of the United States. And he had every intention of returning to Springfield and continuing to practice law when he left office. So he's a great inspiration to many of us who are members of the bar and certainly to many jurists as well. And so what we have for Judge Smith is an original copy of the Springfield, Illinois newspaper dated December 20th, 1856. And in the left-hand column toward the bottom of the page, Judge, you will see an advertisement for the law firm of Lincoln and Herndon, attorneys and counselors of law available to practice in courts of law or chancery throughout the state. So yes, Abraham Lincoln was a trial lawyer and an advertising lawyer. And we have this for Judge Smith, and there's a nice plaque on it that says, Lawyers and Legends 2013, to the honorable and legendary Gilbert A. Smith, Jr.
Sure?
No, let me just say.
I knew you couldn't do it. I knew you couldn't do it.
Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight for the reason that we're here, Legal Aid of Manasota, and I appreciate the support, and I appreciate the interest all of you have in the history of Manatee and Sarasota County, and all the lawyers and the judges that are here. So thank you very much.
The thing I find most unusual about that presentation is that was lawyer advertising, wasn't it? You know, and they said it would ruin the profession. You know, I'd also like to take a moment to thank another one of our platinum sponsors, that is the Grossman, Roth, and Partridge firm. And that leads me to talk about what happened when Judge Smith's book started to circulate. You know, people like Charlie Ann and others said, now this could be a great movie. And of course, I think we'd all agree. frontier times in Manatee County, lawyers fighting the savages and each other. Why not make it a movie? And I heard they talked about some big budget names, you know, Clooney, Brad Pitt, those guys. But then the reality was we've got swashbuckling heroes right here in this community. And I know, and you can all imagine the names that came up first. Bill Partridge, Lamar Matthews. And they're here tonight to talk about it. Two swaggering buckaroos. Come on up, fellas.
Lamar won't put his hat on. Can y'all see Lamar? Lamar, I came up.
I don't have a dry clean hat from a campus store. I just got my straw hat, and I've been told, but in the Lord's house and at bar meetings, you don't wear your hat in the house. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's right. Lamar, I had a hard time finding a place to tie my horse up. I had to go over there to Midtown Plaza and tie it to a sewer pipe. Now, where did you put your Shetland pony? Huh?
He's eating at the table, table number 9 with me.
Somebody said if you and Lamar get up there on the stage, it's going to look like Dean Martin and Bob Hope. And I said, you don't look anything like Dean Martin.
Oh, you're good.
Anyway.
You see who's holding the microphone.
They asked Lamar and a bunch of us to be a part of this movie, and I'll tell you what, we went out to Les McDowell. Les, you and your wife over here, would you stand up for us? Yeah, this is Les. For those of you that may not know it, he and his wife, Connie, they have built an entire Western set out in East Manatee, and it's just something beautiful to see. They actually film Western movies out there. So we went out there and we did this movie, and Lamar will tell you a little bit about the movie.
Well, if I'm allowed to get a little closer to the microphone. Oh, there it is. Good, good. Thank you, Bill. Les is wonderful. He not only gave of his time and talents, but he contributed an entire wardrobe. I went out, I didn't have a lot of Western clothes, and he opened up a wardrobe. I ended up with a frock that I think was last worn by somebody about 1940 from a rodeo, and an old hat, and shirt, and he was really good to me. And then my Coast Guard comes riding in, this handsome gentleman from Alabama, with something he'd just gotten out of the dry cleaners, with blue jeans that had been ironed. I didn't know they ironed blue jeans for a crease in Manatee County. And a horse, a real live horse, not my Shetland pony, that I believe he put through a car wash. So he was so clean and I was so swarmy, but I was the lawyer and he was the judge, and I think that's the way it's supposed to be played, isn't it?
And he was
and Les, I want to tell you, you were outstanding with your contributions to their beautiful place out on North Rye Road. His wife Connie is wonderful. I got to meet her tonight. This whole thing could not have been done without you and your expertise and your willingness to share your great gifts. We thank you, sir, very much. Let's give him a hand.
All right, let's take a look at what we did out there.
I will never reject from any consideration personal to myself the cause of the defenseless or the oppressed or delay anyone's cause for lucre or malice. So help me God.
And so every lawyer's career begins with a promise and commitment to help those who cannot afford the legal services they so desperately need. Pro bono services are at the heart of a lawyer's duty. Pro bono means for the public good. Our constitutional due process rights ensure that persons charged with crimes receive legal representation when they cannot afford it through the Office of the Public Defender. But who provides such services in all other areas of the law? Every lawyer in the 12th Judicial Circuit and every lawyer in Florida. the Florida Bar now mandates lawyers to provide legal services at no cost or at reduced cost to try to fill the needs of the public, for the public good. But it wasn't always that way. Let's take a journey back in time. On January 9, 1855, Manatee County was established. It included all the land from about 10 miles north of the Manatee River, which is now Hillsborough County, all the area which is now Sarasota County, south to Charlotte Harbor, from the Gulf of Mexico east to the western shore of Lake Okeechobee. There were settlements all along the Manatee River. Except for these villages, most of the county was unexplored frontier, inhabited by wild animals. And I don't mean the lawyers. I mean real panthers, bears, wolves, and alligators. It was with this backdrop that the county seat was determined and located at the village of Manatee. Until the first courthouse was completed in 1861, county government had been conducting business in churches or stores. Once this courthouse was built, business from all 5,000 square miles of the county was conducted in one central location. This courthouse included a courtroom for the judiciary. Florida divided the judicial jurisdiction into circuits. Originally, the Southern Judicial Circuit, which stretched from Brooksville all the way to Key West, specifically encompassing what is now Manatee and Sarasota counties. During this era, the judges traveled to each county seat in the circuit. They often traveled many miles by horseback and became known as circuit riders. Enough for now about the judges. Let's look at one of the first attorneys, Edgar Mandelbert Graham, a veteran of the Civil War, and his family arrived in Manatee County in 1867. He was the first lawyer to reside in our geographical area. He practiced law, but also was a Florida legislator, a deputy clerk, and was the superintendent of schools. If that wasn't enough to keep him busy, he was also on the Board of Health and the Board of Trade. But in those days, he probably wasn't tracking billable hours. By this time, the government seat was moved from the village of Manatee 40 miles southwest into the wilderness. Pine Level was born. It wasn't much of a town, but it had a small wooden courthouse and a jail. The town began to grow, and by 1880, it had a post office, a sawmill, boarding houses, general stores, blacksmith, and churches. Oh, and it had saloons. Many saloons. Cowboys roamed the streets of Pine Level, patronizing those saloons, those many saloons. Not surprisingly, there were fights every night. Gunfights, knife fights, and just plain fist fights. It was no wonder that Pine Level earned its reputation as a rowdy town. Nevertheless, it was the county government seat for over 20 years. Granted, the first lawyers in Manatee County didn't have an abundance of legal work, but that didn't mean they had time on their hands. These lawyers needed to supplement their income. Many sought appointment to full or part-time positions with the government. They opened businesses outside of the practice of law. For example, they sold real estate and examined titles. They published a newspaper. They owned an abstract company, a tag agency, a nursery, as well as law offices. In 1886, John Hamilton Gillespie arrived, and with the Florida Mortgage and Investment Company, he began the development of downtown Sarasota. Few members of the community had money, so lawyers worked for barter or they worked for free. As commerce increased from the cattle, agriculture, shipping, and transportation, so did legal conflict. Lawyers were hired, but not always paid. They did the work because it was the decent and honorable thing to do. These early lawyers used their advocacy skills to build a better community. They became public servants as mayors, councilmen, and commissioners. They served as judges and justices of the peace. They used those special skills they acquired as lawyers to provide legal services to those who could not represent themselves, for the public good. As such, pro bono service began in Manatee and Sarasota counties.
That was an interesting day at the ranch, as they say. The water on the road, by the way, on the banks of Dry Creek, that particular day was not so Dry Creek. I think Nick Baden invented that new name. Before moving forward, I have the high privilege of commending and recognizing two additional major contributors and supporters that have made this evening a success, and I refer to Gary and Elizabeth Kompakis. I want to tell you a little about what they do that most people don't know about. A long, long time ago, probably when I was still back in Braden, I ended up being chairman of a stewardship committee on a church funding drive, and I read somewhere that the book that a person owns that tells them the most about that person, the single book is what? It's their checkbook. Where your money is, there will your heart be also, or something like that. Well, Gary and his wife, a life partner, Elizabeth, have generously and without fanfare supported a broad spectrum of causes in our community for a long, long time. And a central theme of those contributions relates to helping the most vulnerable among us to have an increased chance of hope and happiness. The bar has been the beneficiary of this in the past and tonight. They were major contributors in this sense of community and supporting the diversity event, We Are Sarasota, which was sponsored by a diversity committee of the bar just last fall. Large crowd and regarded as a great success in bringing together disparate cultural elements of Sarasota into one We Are Sarasota. Let me tell you the range of their services, including tonight being major funders. In the area of health, major contributors to the fight for cancer cure with the Ross Camp Institute, and general rescue, a fight to stop autism. In minority advancement, major contributors to United Negro College Fund, the NAACP, and the New Bethel Church Youth Ministry. In child health and education, Shriners International, Special Olympics, Hope Kids Community, Habitat for Humanity, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Clubs, Early Learning Coalition, educational institutions, Riverview High School, Sarasota High School, their whole wrestling program, Ringling College of Art and Design, and for years, Foundation for Families of Fallen Officers and First Responders. These are the kind of people that make our communities of Sarasota and Braden, Manatee and Sarasota counties wonderful places to live, and I commend both of them to you and ask if they please stand for your recognition. Gary and Elizabeth Kompakis, we're honored to know you.
We'd also like to recognize two other platinum sponsors and well-known firms in our communities. the Harley Ball firm. I think the Harley's over here, and the Icod Merrill firm, some of them over here. Both of always generous with things with the bar. At this point, we will begin our real purpose for the night, and that is to recognize the legends and lawyers of Manatee and Sarasota County. The first group that we will present to you are really three of the deans of Manatee County, and who I consider the deacon of Sarasota County. He just walked off this stage. So if you would, please watch this presentation regarding our first set of lawyers and legends.
A legend may have an easy manner, but a fierce competitiveness.
Bob is one of those people that could have gone anywhere in the country and been successful, but he viewed Manatee County and Sarasota as his home. And in that context, Bob views it's a responsibility of attorneys that are typically better educated and more affluent to give back to the community. And from day one, since I've known him, he has done that 24/7. Almost every organization that he touches, that he goes on the board, for example, he ends up being the president or chair of the board. He went to bat to help the homeless, for example, in Manatee County during this recession, and literally raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to assist the homeless and the Turning Points organization in serving the homeless. And no one knows about that. He just went out and did it because it needed to be done. Bob is absolutely a person of integrity at all levels. His natural intelligence, coupled with the training he's received from his educational background at Princeton and the University of Florida School of Law, has made him a phenomenal attorney. But Bob is truly one of the finest attorneys one could ever meet. His standard of ethics is unquestioned. If Bob Blaylock gives you his word, people just don't think about it. One of the most marvelous attributes of Bob is that your day is always better after you met with him than before. I'm a much better lawyer for having known you. I'm a much better person for having known you. And I'm a very fortunate lawyer indeed that when I joined the firm, it was a firm that you would continue to be associated with and mentor me. And you're still mentoring me. So thank you very much, Bob Blaylock.
John is a very hard worker. John is a perfectionist. He's also a very funny, a very warm, very teasing person. He's the person in the office that goes around and checks to see how everybody's weekend was, how everybody's vacation was. He can tell you about everybody's child, what they're doing. He's really a good heart of the firm. He's a great mentor. He's mentored quite a number of us. And I mean, you work for John, you work hard. And he really does pay attention to details. He expects everybody that works for him to pay attention to details. But he's not the kind of mentor where he tells you how to do it. He's the kind that he sits and kind of tests your brain, asks you questions, gets you thinking, and I think there are quite a number of us that have really appreciated that method of teaching. He still comes to work, he's excited. He'll come back from court and have had a blast. I mean, it's still so much fun. And even when it's difficult and we all joke about getting in that corner that you have to figure out how to get out. I mean, he's always the creative one to get out. And he just still has that fire in him that he's had for the 40-some years that he's been practicing. Well, I would not be the lawyer I am today without John Harley. He has been my mentor, he's been my friend, he's been my longtime partner. He talked me into doing the firm that we have now, and helped me do it. and has just been a great guidance and a great friend.
I've known Lamar for probably 20 years, since I really became active in the editorial page at the Herald Tribune. He's been a big influence, not only on me, but he's a great source, a source of wisdom, a source of information, a source of guidance even on occasion. And grew up in Manatee, went to Manatee High School, all-state trombone player, was in a band back in the day. He has this sense of decency about him. He cares, he's a kind man, he's kind of got that old school politeness when he speaks to you, always says something nice first, and then hits you with what he's asking for, and then says something nice to close. So that's always nice. He's not flamboyant about his brains, but he's a very smart lawyer. But he's just got this sensibility about him, a calm about him, that, if you're a junior lawyer, if you're a mid-level lawyer, you would really value his counsel. He's got a great ability to connect with his clients, say school board members, and also with members of the public. I think when you grow up under the circumstances that he grew up, that you either fail or you succeed. And if you succeed, you remember the people who helped you along the way, and you never forget that, and he'll never forget that. Without being in the same business, you've been a mentor. You've helped me appreciate the qualities that make for a good community leader. Doing the right thing, as I mentioned, not just for your clients, but for the community, and always keeping an eye on that. And you don't run into that many people over the course of a career that you can say that about and that you can confide in. And so I think just thank you.
Well, besides being a great lawyer, he's a great person in the community. He really encourages everyone around him to be involved in community activities, and considerably dedicated to his clients and to the firm, and always has been. I mean, even as long as he's been working, he's not slowing down at all. I mean, he works constantly and for his clients wherever he is and whatever they need, and I think he instills that in everybody who's around him, to be sure that the client is taken care of first and get everything they need done when they need it done. The things he's done with the community college and with other local organizations show that he's really committed to the community and not just to his own self-interest, because I think he's done a lot of things that he enjoys doing, and he's done them because he enjoys doing them and not for any personal reward, just because to benefit the community. Going back from my own experience, I started with the firm as a very young attorney and began doing estate planning and estate administration work. And I remember I would do work for him and I'd get it back with a red pen marked all over it. And I got to where I could read his handwriting pretty well, so with all those comments that he gave, and I think he still does that. I think the one thing he commits himself to is just being sure this is a great place to live and a great place to work, and getting people involved in making it a great place. I think to be a legend, you have to have the respect of everyone around you, and I think that Greg and all the others certainly have that.
But I would like to take a moment to thank another one of our major sponsors. I don't know if you looked around and saw these incredible vehicles here. We've got Porsche, we got Audi, and who we are tonight is Suncoast Motorsports. They're one of our sponsors. They're a great dealership. And by the way, my personal favorite that's not here tonight, Volkswagen, you got to give them some love too. I'm no longer allowed at the dealership during normal working hours, but I do go on Sunday and occasionally look at the cars. It's a long story, doesn't need to be discussed. But these are lovely vehicles, and I think you can make some great deals tonight once you're done with the auction bidding. We have another segment that we're going to talk about, and then I remind everybody that the silent auction is going to close in 10 minutes. If you've got a last-minute bid you were trying to make to beat everybody else, now's the time to do it. 10 minutes and it'll be closed. But I'd like to bring up our next segment now, and you're seeing the way we're presenting these. They're self-explanatory, and so let's take a look at this next segment.
A legend stands unwavering in the face of adversity.
I first met Mr. Dietz when we were freshmen in law school, 1949, at the University of Florida. Mr. Dietz was somewhat of a legend. The scariest professors had him secretly as a pet because he was a real brainy, smart, analytical guy that we all admired and left to study with him when we could. We could learn a lot. George Dietz joined military and became a Marine, went through Parris Island boot camp, came out of PFC, and like 1 week later, he was promoted to a second lieutenant. And he was then sent to officer school to learn how to be an officer. And he also went to Korea with the 1st Marine Division. That, George, you have all the characteristics that clients have seen in you through the years, to where they loved you. It was a personal relationship. You were not a number on a file. You were a real person, and you had the honesty, the integrity, the intellect, the fierce loyalty to your friends, and that carries over to your neighbors and to your partners. And that's why you are adored by all of us who have worked with you. And broadly in this community, there's a wide feeling of love and support, and you have been a legend to all of us.
Roy came down here to Florida in 1960 and practiced in Venice from 1960 until 1968, when he was appointed to the county court bench by Governor Claude Kirk. He served on the bench from 1968 until 1977, when he then left to become a partner at the Holland and Knight law firm. He practiced there for 17 years. In 1994, he decided to come back to Sarasota and practice a little country law, and Steve Judd and I were lucky enough that he joined our firm, and we have now been practicing since that period of time. I take great honor and privilege with the fact that Roy has practiced with me longer than he practiced with anybody else and longer than he was on the bench. You can't say anything about Roy without saying anything about his wife, Jan. They've been married for 56 years, and Jan is the equivalent of Roy. So I would say that probably the best decision he ever made was marrying Jan. If you've ever seen To Kill a Mockingbird, he's Atticus Finch. No matter what happens, he's unflappable. He is calm, cool, and collected in any issues that he's ever had to deal with. He looks kind of like Gregory Peck. He is always in control of his emotions. He's always in control of what it is that he's going to say. Roy is the epitome of judicial temperament. In 1972, when the courts changed, Roy actually was a circuit court judge at that time. He had been appointed a little bit before the change, the constitutional change. So he was, on the fighting lines, trying to determine how these courts were going to be run, because he was right there from the beginning. Well, a couple of years ago, the Judge Shebb Inn of Court awarded Roy a plaque and an honor for being one of the most courtly people in Sarasota law. That's a microcosm of what he is. He's honest, he's fair, he is intelligent, he is deliberate. I think that he set a standard that many of the other judges have followed to this day. Many of them now practice before him when he was a judge, and I think they all recognize that that's the type of judge that I want to be.
My dad, Bob Moore, is just a tremendous guy. He's been a great father. He's a great example. He's a guy who, who has reached out to the community in ways that have been really ahead of his time. And I'm really proud that he's my dad. Graduated from law school in 1967. The Condo Act, I think, was passed in 1968, and pretty immediately he became an expert in the field because nobody else was. It was all brand new. When we were kids, we knew my dad didn't drink. And yet we'd hear that he was going to these bar meetings all the time. It just was this incongruous thing, couldn't figure out why until Mom said, oh no, that's what lawyers do and where they go to meet. Pretty early on it was clear to us that people would defer to him and seek out his opinion, and that what he thought was important to other people. One of the things I noted pretty early on is my dad and mom, they treated everybody the same. And in the 70s, that wasn't necessarily the way it always was. It didn't matter what your income level was, what your race was, anything. I mean, my dad he was the basketball coach brave enough to drive into Grove Street and pick up all the kids over there, so they were always on our basketball teams. And one of the things he got involved in was iodine deficiency disorder, which was the world's leading cause of preventable mental retardation. Back in the early 90s, it affected a billion people worldwide. Through Kiwanis and through heavily his efforts in Kiwanis, he traveled to Ghana to do some scouting missions, he did some other things, and then pushed Kiwanis to work with UNICEF and to negotiate agreements between governments to buy iodized salt and help Kiwanis raise money and build iodized salt plants all over the world. And as a result, iodine deficiency disorder has been eliminated as a known health risk around the world. An amazing accomplishment. Lawyers are Little League coaches. They are members of Kiwanis. They are elders and deacons in their churches. They take care of people. They generally are people you can go to for things. And my dad really lived that out. And people know my dad. They don't think of him in the characterization of lawyers. They think of him as a really great man who deserves that title of legal legend.
By the way, the other people I'd like to thank tonight would be all of the folks who sponsored these Lawyers and Legends plaques that you see on the wall, the centerpieces you have in front of you, and all of the paralegals who have volunteered to assist tonight. And there's a few people who recognize who does the work. Thank you. And now, without further ado, I'd like to move on to our next segment and talk about some more of our Lawyers and Legends. Let's take a look.
A legend rises to the challenge presented.
At 1962, I believe she was one of maybe only one other female attorney, certainly in the Manatee Bar, I believe in the Manatee and Sarasota Bar. And she practiced in various capacities, mostly in a solo practice until 1972. When she was elected to the county court position that she then held until her death. We were a close-knit family. We all lived here in Bradenton for a long time and had all of that contact. We did spend a lot of time, summers at the beach and family cottages, and making one of her favorite things to do was to make coquina stew. Well, you got to collect a lot of coquinas to make any kind of chowder out of them, but she did that. We spent a lot of time just playing at their house growing up because they lived on the river. She was a pioneer to, again, in 1959, to suddenly become the breadwinner of your family for a single woman at the time. It's not easy today, and there were much fewer options, and she was decisive and took her plot and did phenomenal with it. Within 3 years after her husband died to be graduated from law school, she worked hard to achieve that. She had worked 10 years within the legal community doing everything that she could do to improve herself, and that was recognized that she was a quality person, had quality ethical standards and legal skills, and she did kind of everything as a sole practitioner, which is probably a great basis for being a judge, and particularly a county court judge, where you're dealing with, people's real problems. And I think she really enjoyed helping those get resolved.
I was introduced to her by Bill Harrison, my senior partner. He had received a call from Eileen Griffith the night before, a longtime family friend of his, and she announced to him on the phone that she had his next associate. And he said, "Well, that's nice, but I'm not looking for any associates right now." She says, "Well, you're going to want this one. She'll be at your office tomorrow for an interview." And we did make the decision to extend her an offer to become an associate. And the rest is history. She became not only our first female associate, but our first female shareholder. This was not new to her because back in 1970, she was in the first class of females at Lafayette College up in Pennsylvania, an institution that had been all male for 148 years. So from that point on, she became the first female president of the Sarasota County Bar Association. She was also, I believe, the first female member of the otherwise all-male University Club in Sarasota. She didn't think that women needed to be given any advantage, that they could earn their way based on their own merit, and she modeled that behavior. She's very smart. She has not only the big picture of a client's needs, but also she drills down and gets the details. She understands an attorney's obligation to the client to get the best result for the client, whether it be a real estate transaction or a complex loan. She thinks of things that many other lawyers might miss. But she does it in a way that she has such a engaging personality and that killer smile that I think, she has such a charisma about her that I think it makes her all the more effective.
John was a good card player, and John would perch on the wall at the University of North Carolina, and he would introduce himself to the incoming freshmen and invite them to a friendly card game. So John developed his own kind of self-employment, shall we say, by being a very successful poker player at the University of North Carolina. So while I was working in the student cafeteria, John was working the wall. John really does have a good sense of humor. He doesn't display that very often. And I think one of the early examples of John's sense of humor was the naming of his first dog. He named the dog Judge. So John got used to early in his career telling judges what to do. He would tell Judge to sit, he would tell Judge to come, he would tell Judge other things, and John has always been and always will be one of the most totally honest persons that I have ever come across. I mean, he is one of those people, if he says it, you can take it to the bank. He's not hesitant to express his opinion. He'll listen. He'll listen to more so than some of his adversaries, I think, in the courtroom will give him credit for. He's always thinking. But John is a person of just absolute personal integrity. I would trust him with anything and everything. And that means a lot. That's a core quality, that's a core value, that's just who he is. John has always had a soft touch, a soft spot in his heart for people who have grown up hard. John empathizes with people who need services like the Salvation Army offers, those really quality services to people who are down on their luck, who need a helping hand and need some help. And he's been there to provide that.
These are very inspirational stories, and it is moving to see that we got a lot of people in this community that don't just practice law, but give back a lot to the community. And even though we've got a long show, I have to tell you one personal tale, because I promised I would do it I told myself I would. Roberta Knowles was the first judge I ever appeared in front of. 1980, I'm a young prosecutor, I don't know anything. It's my second jury trial. I'm kind of nervous. And the jury's impaneled, we're about to start, and Roberta leans over and says, "Approach the bench, counsel." Just me. So I approach the bench, wondering what I've done. She cups the mic and says, "I'll bet you 50 cents you can't convict this guy." Swear to God. Would that ever happen today? No, but it was awesome. I mean, I got a judge betting me money I can't convict some guy. It was amazing. And she actually paid me in the elevator, 50 cents, swear to God. I've always loved her for that. It was great. Just like with Judge Smith, I'll never forget the first time he said, "Swear the witness, let the lion begin." I was there for that one. It's amazing the stuff we used to do. And now I'd like to ask the members of the bar serving in the military to come up to the stage tonight so we can take a moment to hear from them.
I am Major Allison Archbold, United States Marine Corps.
Major Wendell Darville, United States Army Reserve.
Colonel Art Jackman, U.S. Air Force, Reserve.
Captain Jeffrey Lurson, United States Army, and Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. This flight jacket I'm wearing went to Vietnam in 1965 with a combat helicopter pilot in the Marine Corps. My father. The boots I'm wearing did 6 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan with a Marine infantry officer, my brother. Please join all of us and give a big round of applause and a thank you to all the veterans in the audience and everybody who served our nation around the world.
Thank you. I'm glad we could have a chance to recognize these folks who don't actually serve in the courtroom with us all the time, but also serve our military. I'd like to move on now to some more of the salutes we have to the legends of this evening. And so without further ado, let's take a look at the next group.
A legend is learned and wise and hungry for knowledge.
World War II started basically when he had just started the University of Florida, and so he enlisted into the Army Air Corps and became a pilot of the B-25. He did his learning how to become a pilot, and then he shipped off to the European theater and was based mostly in Italy for many years. One of the greatest things about my granddad, and everyone who has ever come to talk to me about my granddad would tell me this, and I also knew it from a family perspective, but his word was his bond. If he said he was going to do something, he did it. There was no confirming email necessary, or fax, or letter. There was no CYA memo that needed to be put in the file. If he said, I'm going to do X, you could take it to the bank that he was going to do X. Also, he was fearless. A lot of people called him IB, short for Iron Balls, and that's because he could take on anyone, and it wouldn't faze him. And what he would always tell me, and I'm sure he's told other people, is, look, this practice of law is nothing compared to someone shooting at you as you're trying to drop a bomb and they don't want you to drop that bomb. My son was born a year ago, basically a month before my granddad passed away. And that's probably my greatest regret, is that my son won't know my granddad as a person. However, I'm hoping that my son will know my granddad through me. And when I could sit here and look at my granddad and say, thank you for helping me become the person that I am today. Thank you for instilling those values in me so I can turn around and tell my son, Austin Hunter, that this is the way, this is the type of person you should be, and this is how you should live your life.
Well, I know I met Bill Grimes when I was very young, probably about 4 years old. But my first memory of Bill Grimes was when I was 7 years old. I was involved in a golf cart accident and he represented me. And as I recall, he did a good job. If I have to describe Bill Grimes, I think common touch comes to mind. This is a person who really had the ability to empathize with everyone from all walks of life, and watching him interact with his clients and others in the community was a real pleasure, because he cared and he got it and he understood what they were up against, and he could see things at their level. He would always be quick to remind myself and others that it was a profession. Nationally, he served in the military in World War II. Really immediately after graduating from law school, he also served in the Florida legislature, so his reach went far beyond the community. But his legacy is a real love for Manatee County, not just in the legal profession, which he excelled in. He was the president of the Bar Association, he was on the board of governors for the state bar, but he also involved himself in community organizations like Rotary. Absolutely, Bill Grimes has been and continues to be an inspiration in my life. He really, truly has. Not just in the law, although I learned so much from him. He took time to ensure that I had an opportunity to learn from him. But the way he conducted himself in the community, and I would be remiss if I didn't say his political career didn't inspire me as well. If I had the opportunity to say one thing to Bill Grimes, I would thank him again for his service to our country, his service and influence to the state of Florida, the impact that he's had in our community, and frankly, the influence and impact that he's had in my life.
Well, he was born in Orlando and moved here when he was very young. He had 4 siblings, 3 brothers and a sister, and he grew up, of course, in Sarasota, as you say, of very modest means. He persevered and went to Sarasota High School, and after that he joined the Army Air Corps. But since he graduated from high school in 1944, by the time he was in the Army Air Corps and all things had been settled, he was trained as a tail gunner on a B-25. He was one of the few judges appointed to the appellate court without being a sitting judge prior, but also he was, I'm sure, the first appellate judge from this area. And so that was sort of a big thing, and there was a lot of pride. I know that even when I was 16 or 17 when that happened, that there was a lot of pride in the legal profession in Sarasota and Manatee to know that one of their own had been selected. He loved the law. He loved studying it. He loved researching it. He loved writing it as a judge. That was his major emphasis in life. He also was very much concerned about the civility of the practice. When he was in Lakeland at the appellate court, he made it a practice before hearings to go out and meet with the counsel for each side, talk to them, and just get to know them a bit. And that was one of the ways he tried to introduce civility to the practice, getting the attorneys together, and he then became very involved in the Inn of Court movement. That was a very large part of his life, of being part of the Inn of Court, organizing it, making sure it got off the ground and established, and it is run, and it runs very well today in Sarasota.
I just have to say this. Obviously, I was Hunter's partner for many years, and I loved his one-liners. He really wouldn't talk right to you, but the first time a Japanese car showed up in our parking lot and we had a partners meeting, he made that comment, "Guess some of you fellas forgot about Pearl Harbor, huh?" To nobody in particular, but that was Hunter. We gotta love the guy. But I'd like to move ahead to our next segment of films. These have been really inspiring, so let's take a look.
A legend is tolerant and innovative.
He was part of that generation that went to World War II, and Dad also was in Korea. Coming out of the military, they had a sense of momentum that they brought to what they were doing, to their professions, to their careers. And that, I think, carried him and helped him establish a career and also a path or a goal about where he wanted to go with what he did. He came to town when there was a change in how the practice of law was evolving. He came into town, started out as a trial attorney, and got into real property issues. He did a lot of trial work, a lot of inverse or eminent domain work, issues regarding property rights, governmental action and regulation of property rights. And by happenstance or by intentional action, he found himself on the cutting edge of this growth of regulatory legal framework that was happening. He worked with the West Coast Inland Navigational District, which was an agency that put together the Intracoastal Waterway, and that was going on in the 60s and into the early 70s. I'm not sure he would be comfortable with being called a legend. I think he'd be comfortable with having his contribution to the community acknowledged, simply because he put a lot of work into it at a personal and professional level. And I think he recognized that those kinds of things took extra effort. I think that's all he wanted. He just wanted to be considered part of the community and to have his contribution to the community recognized.
The qualities I noticed about Mr. Harrison were honesty. Mr. Harrison would always tell you what was on his mind. He would also give you a way of looking at a particular situation that could be both a legal analysis as well as a commonsensical type of analysis. Mr. Harrison was a good family man. Mr. Harrison was dedicated to his family. He was dedicated to his community. He was a man that didn't miss work. He was there every day that I can remember as a young man, and as well working with him in later years. He was conscientious. He was a man of great integrity. He was a man that listened to both the rich and he listened to the poor, and he dealt with both equally. I remember Mr. Harrison attending my father's church for many years, and the thing about it, Mr. Harrison, if he wasn't out of town for an Auburn game, he was at church. He was an attentive member of the church. He was a dedicated member of his church. He supported his high school football team. He had seats at Manatee High School on the 50-yard line for, I can't remember, the last 40 or 50 years. And George was always at those games with Rachel, his wife, if she wanted to attend, and his kids, and then his grandkids. But if it was something in the community that you asked George to do, serving as an attorney for the county, which he did for a while as well, doing something for the church, doing something for someone less fortunate, George would do it. You could count on him. Putting your nose to the grindstone, as George told me early on in my career, will make you a successful person. George knew that. He practiced that. He was a tremendous success. And that's probably one thing that I have taken away from what George taught me is work hard, be diligent, be honest, be moral, and you will be successful.
My dad was born in North Carolina, and he was born near a little town called Eichard, North Carolina. Yes, and it's not a coincidence. Most of the Eichards are in North Carolina. A few of us have drifted out to other places, and my dad was one of those that ended up leaving there. He studied forestry at North Carolina State in Raleigh, and he actually had 2 years in, and like so many folks during that period, he interrupted his college to enlist in the Army. His group had responsibility for going into the beachheads before the landings and clearing the obstructions. He came back to North Carolina State in Raleigh and finished his degree. He married his hometown sweetheart from Virginia, Jean Allison Story, and that was in 1947. And then I came along in 1948. I did actually get to go into sit in the back in the courtroom while he was conducting a trial, and that was a thrill, and it made quite an impression on me. And I think that's when I decided that I might like to try to do that myself. He was what I think and I think many of us would describe as of the old school, meaning that indeed it was a privilege. He regarded it as a privilege, and he felt like that privilege was associated with a lifetime of obligation to give back and to be of service to the profession and to the public. He was not one to draw attention to himself. He was, I think, particularly appreciated because he was the type of person who just, he was a thorough gentleman and a complete professional in every setting. And he always put others before himself.
He grew up as a child through the Depression and saw just terrible hardships. He's told stories about coming home from school and hearing about one of the children down the street dying from an illness that, you know, could have been prevented. So I think he developed a big heart in that regard. And he served in the military during World War II, and I think that generation just has a great sense of responsibility to serve others. And so even though, you know, he represented millionaires, did, you know, multi-million-dollar projects in his real estate practice, he was still willing to help out the people who really needed it. And I know that he continues to take pro bono cases even into his 80s. He had a reputation of being very involved in things like the Bar Association, involved with his church, and he was just a very outgoing man, and sometimes you almost forgot he was an attorney because he was a lot of fun to be around. and maybe one of his biggest contributions came through our daily bread. And he didn't just write checks. He showed up every morning and served hundreds of meals to homeless people, and I think really treated them with a lot of respect. I think maybe the biggest thing I've learned from him is that it is very important for our clients to take something complicated and try to make it practical and understandable. And they don't want long explanations about the theories of the law. They want to know how it affects them. And I think that's the way Jack always approached things, and I think that's what made him very popular with his clients. That painting, I think, is a great memorial to a very different time in the practice of law. I think it just showed the fellowship of that time, and I think it was painted in the 1970s, maybe the late 70s. But it's a great picture of kind of the lawyers being themselves and the way that Jack saw them. And Jack didn't see them as just attorneys, he saw them as people and friends and colleagues.
Look, I have to tell you this story. I know we're running long, but you know, when I moved from Bradenton to Sarasota, I was back there visiting my mom, and I ran into George Harrison, and he was a very nice man. And he said to me, he goes, "Gosh, how are you getting along down there in Sarasota?" There was real concern in his voice. You know, what's it like living with those people? And then I said, "George, look, it's not that bad. You know, I got a Lexus, some drawstring pants, and I put my kids in therapy. I'm fitting right in." And he walked away happy. He was satisfied that that was what it was like to live here. But I'd like to ask Bill to come up and help me with our next segment, because these are very special people.
Yeah, this next group, if any of you have been practicing from the 70s till now in Sarasota, and there's a lot of you that have and some that haven't, these next three people probably did a lot to actually increase your soul. Those were the good old days when we used to go to hearings 20 minutes early just because we could. Those days you had no security. You just walked in the judges' chambers, and we all just sat around with Mary Beth and Jan and Fay Rice, and the judges would come out and we would sit and talk about fishing. Judge Silvertooth could tell you everywhere where the fishing were biting. So much that I don't know why he's getting an honor tonight. He's got a fishing reef named after him. I mean, that's like deity in some people. So, very special group. Judge Smith is everybody's favorite judge because he had that belly laugh that meant a lot to you, and you always knew where he was because you walked in the front door and you knew he was on the 3rd floor because you could hear him from the 1st floor. And Judge Hensley, what a man's man he was, and what just the brightest of all judges. All three of them were, and they just don't make them like these three anymore, and I think Gary would agree with me.
Well, if I'm going to really be honest, I'll also confess that during that 20 minutes we were talking to the judges, waiting for the other lawyer to show up, we were probably mentioning this guy from Tampa, Judge. I don't know why he's such a problem. I've tried to work this out, trying to sow a few seeds of home cooking there before he got there. But let's take a look at what we've got.
What makes someone a legend? They think they will be forgotten, but they never are.
Bob Hensley, of course, was an excellent lawyer, Duran. I remember him very well, but he was an outstanding judge. And I think of Bob, he's what I call a perfect judge. His courtroom demeanor was absolutely perfect. Bob's highly intelligent. He's what I call a legal scholar. When I think about what a real perfect judge should be, Durand, I think of Bob Hensley. In other words, that's how much I think of him. When you appeared before Bob Hensley, even if you lost the case, you felt you got a fair shake.
But Judge Hensley was a very fine judge. And then I got to know him personally. He's even a better person than he was a judge, to be honest. He ran a very good courtroom. He wouldn't let you have much fun. with other lawyers, but of course he made you stay right on the line. But he was a very good judge. Judge Hensley is certainly in the top tier of that group. Of course, I'd known Lynn at law school, and I even liked him then. And he was a very good judge and a very good judge-mate, so to speak. We had a very good bench, got along well, we helped each other, and we had lunch with each other almost every day. He ran a good courtroom. He didn't do it like Judge Hensley did. He did it out of fear.
Lynn has always been dedicated to a life of public service. And he did such a great job that he was selected to be a circuit judge. That brought him some notoriety, particularly as a young circuit judge. He handled so many cases that came into the public eye and into the newspapers, and did it well and brought honor to our circuit judgeship. When the state needed a judge to go to Miami to try some accused judges there, Lynn went. When we needed a judge to go to Okaloosa County and try a circuit judge that was in a nasty domestic relation case, Lynn went. He became known statewide as a reputation with the Florida bar in the program of a fair trial and a free press, which was a great burning issue in the early 70s and mid-70s. And so he was called upon by our appellate courts to sit with them on numerous cases. Lynn, wherever he went, was a great judge. Thank you, Lynn, for your dedication, for your many years of public service, for the example that you set professionally and personally in this community. And because of these things, we honor you. And I thank you most of all for being my friend.
My dad is really a unique individual because he stayed so close to how he was growing up and to his roots. My dad was born into a pioneer Florida family in Arcadia in 1923. He was graduating high school when working at his uncle's drugstore as a soda jerk. And one of the things he did is he delivered ammonia, Cokes, and other types of soft drinks around town from the drugstore. But he was there when he heard the news that Pearl Harbor was hit. He was only 17 years old, and the Marines wouldn't let him in because he didn't have his mother's consent. So he went back and finished high school and then drove back up there 1 year later and joined the Navy. And he's more of a hero to me now than he ever has been. I mean, not only was he in North Africa and Italy in the Navy, but he did serve at D-Day and was a fireman and a machinist in the ships that delivered troops from England over to France. He went on the bench at a time that the Florida Constitution was revised. Specifically, Article 5 was revised to eliminate all types of courts except the two-tier trial courts of county court and circuit court. Well, my father liked being chief judge. As he told me, he liked being a boss. You know, for a long time, my father's time on the bench, there were just 5 circuit judges of the 12th Judicial Circuit. Judge Hensley, Judge Silvertooth, Judge Dean, and Judge Hall. You know, back then they had such a strong camaraderie. Several of the judges. Judge Hensley and Judge Silvertooth and my dad were such close friends on and off the bench. He believed that everybody should be treated equally under the law, and through the years he emphasized that to me more and more. he has stayed humbled and he stayed true to his roots. He believes in helping other people. He always had his door open for young lawyers and for other litigants who wanted to talk to him and that he wanted to help. And you know, he's a hero of mine because he has been that way. And as I've watched him get older in life and have learned more about him, it's really, I understand what being a legend really is. And those are the people that you look up to in life. Those are the people that set the standard. Those are the people that set a set of values that all of us want to follow. And somebody that you would remember. And if not everybody would be remembered, but my father will be remembered in this community because of the way he conducted himself on the bench as he practiced law, and those things he did for people, not only while he was on the bench, when he was off the bench, and how he treated everybody equally.
Hey, by the way, I want to let everybody know, if you bid on a silent auction item, they are at the back of the room over there and ready to be picked up whenever you want to make your way back there to do that. But now I'd like to ask our volunteers to bring the legends forward and have them line up here in front of the stage, if you don't mind, because we'd like to have a personal token, an award given to each of these people we've heard about tonight. I think we can all agree it's been moving. It's certainly brought back a lot of memories for me of my practice in this community, and reminded me again just how much all of us, whether we're legends or not, do to further the interest of justice. The trick is, this is supposed to be an alphabetical order from left to right, so we'll see how well this works.